Was there anything that made you join TGS over a different program?
100%. I had a bunch of people that I knew went to business school, a bunch of people recommending tutors and whatnot. I had a bunch of people recommending tutors out in like India and stuff. And I was like, okay, great. I can send an email to some random person. But actually, at my first job, the one where I was doing this labor modeling, I had some pretty insane on-site client projects. One involved walking around freezers overnight at a client site, like a warehouse. Basically, all my colleagues were listening to music as we're walking throughout the aisles, like mapping where all of the product was. Like all my buddies were listening to like whatever Kendrick Lamar, and my dad was like, why don't you do some GMAT? And I was like, what kind of GMAT can I possibly do while I'm walking around the aisles? So I was like, all right, I'll just type into my Spotify like GMAT. This podcast came up called the GMAT Strategy. I started listening to it. I was like, all right, here goes nothing. Like, I've got nothing else to do with my time. I might as well make myself even more miserable by listening to a GMAT podcast. So I'm like, all right, guess we'll hit the play button. And all of a sudden, this like super personable guy starts talking, and he's like just so relatable. He's basically starts like, oh yeah, like this sucks, like this test sucks, and it's like, I'm like, oh yeah, I totally agree. And it felt like I was having a conversation with one of my friends. And so I finished the podcast honestly so fast because I was just genuinely interested, and I really liked the way this guy, if you haven't already figured it out, is Isaac. I just really loved the way this guy talked and the way I felt when I was listening to him. And so I just decided to figure out how to reach out to this guy and see if he would be interested in talking to me and maybe working together. Cause I mean, I didn't know what kind of services you offered, but I was like, well, maybe he'd be willing to give me a couple lessons, and I don't really know what I need, but I definitely know that I like the sound of this guy. So yeah, that's exactly what inspired me to reach out to you.
That's awesome. I couldn't possibly be happier to hear that the pod resonated. And it definitely sounds pretty rough walking around a freezer in the middle of the night searching for GMAT related podcasts, but I'm sure plenty of business consultants out there can relate. So I'm happy I could be there in the time of need
Oh
as
man, yeah.